thanks everyone for coming here. Many of you have traveled from distant places, distant locations, so I really appreciate it that you take the time and so you can be here with us. So welcome and thanks again. And before I start, I also want to thank to my team, to the leaders and to regular people in the team, because without them, Space Engineers 2 and VRAGE 3 would not be possible. And this is really important because it's not just me building the game, you know, I'm just like one part of the puzzle. It's all the people in the team and the great organization that we have that we can build something like Space Engineers 2. So when we started to work on Space Engineers 2 3 years ago, we also thought, you know, like, how should it differ from Space Engineers 1? Why should we even do it? And so on. And I always want to have ambitious goals, you know, like to really push and go beyond whatever I think is possible. So of course, the goal was that Space Engineers 2 must be 10 times better than Space Engineers 1 in all dimensions that we can think about. And actually we are using this even to validate individual features that we are implementing to the game, or the quality, you know, so like is artistically, for example, this feature 10 times better than what we have in Space Engineers 1? Is this feature, let's say, more intuitive than in Space Engineers 1? And this is how we are thinking. What we currently have in Vertical Slice 1, which will be released on Monday, is not the final step of our vision. You know, of course, it's just first step. So even those things, I think, will become nicer, prettier, more intuitive, you know, with better performance and better scalability and so on. So it's just first step. But the overall vision is that Space 2 should be 10 times better than Space Engineers 1 in all dimensions. And I will talk about some of them. So the first one is the intuitiveness, or you can call it like UI, UX, user experience, accessibility and so on. So the idea is that Space Engineers 1 is quite a hardcore game, not only because, you know, you can do really complex things in the game, but also the learning curve is quite advanced, especially for new players. You know, like you start to play the game, you don't really know what to do, how to do those things, and the intermediate steps are really long. So, you know, like you need to do many things and then you get some reward from the game. And I personally am not kind of player who is very tolerant, you know, with these kind of games. Even yesterday we had a team game night here and we were playing some games, and you can see the difference that there are some games where the game kind of like throws the complexity at you from the beginning, and I usually quit those games in 15 minutes, you know, and then I just gravitate towards games that are leading me, you know, like they give me like this objective, I do it. They give me next objective and I do it, and I very slowly learn about the game and learn to like the game. So I personally want the same for Space Engineers 2. This doesn't mean that we want to dump down the game, you know, and remove some features that are already in Space Engineers 1. Definitely not. The complexity, or this like end complexity, should stay, but the access to it should be much more streamlined, more accessible, because we really want to be attractive also for mainstream players. Like, we don't want to be, you know, game that is only for nerds or hardcore players. We really want a game that anybody would like to play. And then, you know, the nerds, let them enjoy it, you know, for thousands of hours. That's completely okay, but we also want the people who just wants to experience for a couple of hours or tens of hours. So intuitiveness, that's a big priority for us, and actually number one. The second one is flexibility. So one of the things that is increasing the flexibility is the unified grid system, 25 centimeter unified grid system, which will allow simply, you know, to build with much greater flexibility, but also freedom, you know, because where you could not build in Space Engineers 1, now in Space 2, you can actually build in interiors, you know, you can actually put, you know, make a wall and then put few lights on the wall, which wouldn't be possible in Space Engineers 1 with the large blocks. Another is blueprint building, so being able to actually select some blocks from a grid, copy to blueprint, put it to your toolbar, copy paste it, upload it to workshop, share it with other players, all these kind of things that will increase the flexibility. And again, I don't want to make the game, you know, dumb down the game, but I want to make it easier for players when they have some vision or they want to create something, to simply make it easier for them and also more fun for them to achieve that vision. Third one is visually stunning. So we have VRAGE 3, and one of the few key differences between VRAGE 3 and VRAGE 2 is that VRAGE 3 has ray tracing, global illumination, which means that, you know, the lighting and the shadows is simply much more precise and correct and realistic, and looks much more beautiful. Actually, yesterday I was joking because we were playtesting Space Engineers 2, and I just like randomly went to some place. And then I looked on it again, and it was beautiful, you know, the way the light was being illuminated from the surfaces and illuminating the other surfaces, because there was some kind of green light, and it was being illuminated from that white surface and down on the surface that was on the ground, and with nice shadows coming from the catwalk and everything. Just looks so beautiful. So I actually said that almost any screenshot you take from Space Engineer 2 is beautiful, you know. And like in movies, sometimes they have this saying that every picture should be a masterpiece. Like, you know, there are movies where actually you can take a screenshot from that movie at any place and hang it on a wall, you know, as a painting, and it looks beautiful because the composition, the colors, and everything is just amazing. So some movies try to do this. We are striving for something similar in Space Engineers 2. And then I actually made a joke that maybe actually we can make a competition that find a screenshot in Space Engineers 2 that doesn't look beautiful, you know, because almost all of them look beautiful. Other features that are improving the visuals of the game are tessellated voxels, so you can see these little bumps and details and so on. That applies basically to terrain. Then we have parallax for armor and for blocks. So you can also see that in Space Engineers 1, you know, the armor was basically just a flat surface with a normal mapping being used for the lighting, but you can still feel that it's actually not 3D geometry. You know, when you move around and you see these lines in the armor, it's not real geometry, you know, and it's just faked light. In Space Engineers 2, you know, it's proper geometry, of course simulated with parallax, but still it's a real geometry with proper lighting, proper shadows. It's looking much more realistic. Also, another thing that we are improving are animations. So, and I think that I surprised the team with like how much I'm pushing for the animations, because it's a funny note that originally they planned the animation controller, which is the system in the game engine in the game that is responsible for managing all the transitions of the character, the animation. So like when he's walking, when he stops, he needs to blend to stopping animation. He starts, let's say, strafing, he needs to blend to the strafing. He jumps, he lands, you know, there needs to be some landing animation depending on the velocity and all these kind of things. So this is what we call animation controller for the character. And the original estimation for our character was 5 man days. You know, and in the end, it was actually 50 man days. And we are still working on it. So we really want, you know, the character to look and feel very realistic and very rewarding. Even little things like when you fly, you turn off jetpack and you land. You know, I want really like to, you know, the character should bend his knees. There should be sound and everything, because these little things I think are very rewarding. Or, for example, yesterday we were playtesting the new jetpack, which will not be available on Monday, but it will be available in, let's say, 2 months from now. So the new jetpack has improved boost mode, so you can fly with the jetpack up to 20 meters per second, like in SE1. And if you want to go faster, up to 300 meters per second, you press shift and you just accelerate. And the new, this like second version of the booster is that it starts this kind of like charging up mode for roughly 1 second. So you press the shift, you feel like, you know, it goes and then like boom, and just catapults you forward. And again, it feels very rewarding. So even these little things I'm actually enjoying myself. And sometimes that's kind of the only thing I do in the game, that I'm just running around, you know, jumping and yeah, it just feels good. So visually stunning. I think Vertical Slice 1 looks visually stunning. Vertical Slice 2 with planets and survival, we'll be working on it now to make it visually stunning, so the planets look nice in any lighting condition, on any side of the planet, and so on, which is challenging, but I think we'll manage it. So, yeah. Fourth one is immersive. So in Space Engineers 1, we didn't have lore or story. You know, we actually intentionally kept it quite generic. And we also didn't have human NPCs for multiple reasons, but we didn't have them. And for Space Engineers 2, we will have both. So we will have, we already have the lore, and we will have human NPCs. So the first one, the story of Space Engineers 2 is that it happens in Almagest system, which is 10,000 light years from Earth. People travel them as part of the Bering project. Basically, they are colonizing this new solar system, and they want to establish new place. Just like Europeans were colonizing, you know, other places hundreds of years ago. Like, we wanted to give this like feeling of, you know, like I am on some frontier. Like, you know, this is the frontier. Like, we are here and there is nothing, and we need to colonize it. So like, I want players to have this feeling. And the human NPCs, so again, you will, as part of the campaign or as part of the sandbox, you will meet human NPCs, there will be factions, you will interact with them. I think this is important part, that will increase the richness of the world, so that eventually it will feel like it's a living world, not just empty space around you, but space or a place filled with other people. But again, it's Almagest, they're just colonizing it, so there is not that many people. There will be like, few thousand people. And another one is performance, so we want to improve the performance 10 times. This is not only about, FPS or anything like that, but it's also about scalability. So the engine that we developed is using data-oriented architecture, so we can parallelize the simulation and all these entities that are being simulated and updated and so on. We can much easier parallelize them now, so we can saturate all the CPUs and cores that you have in your PC. So the scalability is much better. And last one, we need to give player clear objectives, clear progression, and some, not maybe final end goal, but some kind of end goal. So like, some objective towards which you are striving as a player. Because Space Engineers 1 was very open-ended. Nobody tells you, like, what you should build. Luckily, for some reason, it worked. Like people enjoy it, so that's good. But I think a proper game needs to also have like very specific winning condition, very specific objectives for the player. They can always, diverge and do their own thing. That's okay. But I think, especially when you are starting and when you are a more mainstream player, you need something to tell you, like, this is your next step, this is your next step, this is your next step. And this is actually something that you should be trying to win over. So I think that's another important thing. So overall, all these things, I hope will create will help create Space Engineers 2 to be 10 times better than its predecessor. The journey is basically just starting, and many vertical slices are in front of us. The next one will be planets and survival. If I'm counting the big ones, then there will be water, then there will be a multiplayer, there will be NPCs, there will be campaign at some point. Then there will be probably some vertical slice where we'll just put all things together, and kind of like polish it. So that's our plan, and I'm really happy that you and also our community are with us on this journey. And this leads to the last thing I want to say, that why we are starting early access in this like very early stage of the game, is that we want to share this journey together with the players. And it's not just a plain phrase that I'm saying it because it sounds cool, but I really mean it, because what would be the benefit of keeping the game just for us for another year or 2 or 3? Players would not be able to play it, so like nobody would benefit. Contrary to this, when we share it with players very early, they can give us feedback, and we also have good feeling. When you see people, how they react to your game, it makes you more happy. The team is more happy, more motivated, they work, I would not say harder, but they're just like more motivated, and then it actually reflects on the product itself. So that's the reason why we are starting so early and sharing the journey with people. But it's actually not as early, because even the vertical slice that we are releasing is quite polished, and visually, and all the features that are quite polished. So that's how we want to do the releases now with these vertical slices. So always select some subset of the feature set, polish it, release it, and then move to next vertical slice and so on. So we don't want to be working on everything, and everything will be in some kind of like a mediocre state. We actually want to work on few things, finish them to a state that we are proud of, release it, move on to another, and so on. So
you mentioned these vertical slices. You put one vertical slice out, then another vertical slice, and eventually merge them all together into one full polished vertical slice. Are you planning to have these vertical slices as sort of different experiences? Like the second vertical slice wouldn't include things from the first vertical slice?
No, they are additive. So basically vertical slice, like we're just adding vertical slice, not replacing. So actually vertical slice is a terminology in game development where when you are a studio and you want publisher to finance your game, you don't go there with nothing, you go there with the first vertical slice, which is showing some vertical slice of the final gameplay of the game. So if it would be, I don't know, some like a shooter like Call of Duty, you would come there with a first level, that works should be polished, probably not like everything and so on, but should be polished enough so they can evaluate, you know, whether you can actually deliver the rest of the game. And then they give you money and you start working on the game. So basically we borrow this vertical slice idea, but it's not that, for example, we'll be selling each vertical slice as an individual game or so. No, no, no. It's still kind of updates, basically. So the first vertical slice is creative mode. The second one that we'll be releasing this year, or there will be smaller ones. So there will be small one, vertical slice 1.1, which will be adding Steam Workshop. Then there will be 1.2, which will be adding many other small things like better animations and so on. And they will be just added, you know, on top of what's already in the game. And then there will be vertical slice 1.5, which will add modding and editor. And again, they will just be added to what's already in the game. Just like, you know, Space Engineers 1, we are also not, every new update is just adding, you know, on top of what is already in the game. And then there will be vertical slice 2, planets and survival. So suddenly, the game will not be just about creative mode, but there will be planets, 2 planets, and survival. So you will be able to play the survival mode on the planet and also in space. So, and then there will be water. So again, what will happen is that we will add third planet, the water planet, Byblos, and also the places on the verdure planet will be filled up with water, which is kind of funny, you know, that first we'll have the planet without water and then we'll kind of like put in the water. And the gameplay will also change because suddenly you will be able to use submarines, build underwater stations and so on. But again, we'll be adding it, so it's incremental additive. It's not, you know, replacing stuff.
Hello everyone, welcome. I'm glad you joined us today for the press event, and of course we are getting ready for release of the game on Monday in a few days, so it's very exciting. And I can show you some pretty pictures finally. So here you can see actually why we decided to go with new engine to really create something new, something more realistic and like cool. So in this case it's a distraction system which was completely redesigned and created from scratch for SE2. Essentially it's not just bending armors, but also fracturing all the blocks. And not just by gun, you can also like hit things like flying with the ship, and when you hit something, you will fracture your block or other person's block, and it will just nicely fall apart. So we really enjoy distraction. That's a big part of our game. You can destroy anything in our world, not only grids, but also asteroids, etc. Planets won't be part of the vertical slice 1, so that there will be just asteroids. And here you can see some crash landing on the planet. For example, in VRAGE 3, what we introduced is like different kinds of surfaces for distraction. So on the left you can see there is some sand surface and some rocky surface. And sand surface you will burrow inside of it, so you will destroy more of that surface, but your ship will survive more because it will destroy less of the ship. So it's always like about balance, the energy conservation. So on the upper image, your ship will be kept intact, but you destroy the turret. But if you crash land on the hard surface, your ship will be crashed. And here you can see you will destroy a little bit of the ship, but most of it is of the surface. We also upgraded to latest Havoc, which is our physics engine that we use also in Space Engineers. Important thing for us was, because our game is also about creating various mechanical contraptions like walking robots, whatever you name it, automating factories, etc., etc. And the big problem in Space Engineers was stability of the simulation. So here we have actually some like test level using the new Havoc 2023, and various cases where we had actual problems in Space Engineers with stability. So there were issues with big mass ratios or stability of the rotors, etc. And here you can see that everything is perfectly stable. This is of course just a prototype in Unreal Engine using that Havoc, but this is something that we want to bring in to our engine in the future updates. And here is some sneak peek. Again, this won't be part of the vertical slice one. This is our next survival update, where we are working hard on making planets as nice as possible and essentially like real planets. So here you can see much more detailed terrain that we are using. It has like density of the height map, I think 4 meters or something like that. And on top of it, we apply detail map. So essentially every part of the planet has some information in the height map. It's not like that bland. And here you can see some nice picture as well. So this is already with water, and that's like far future. We were working for 4 years on the engine and on the game already until now. And we prototype lots of features, so we kind of know the complexity and know how much work it will actually be. Right now we have quite a good idea. We have prototype of water, we have like improved planets, and we know that there will be still lots of work to actually get it done. But now we can have like a really good plan to deliver it over coming years, an idea how to deliver it. Because at the beginning we were like completely without an idea how to actually simulate water on planetary scale, right? Nobody did that. And I think Petr will be talking about it a little bit more. So that's why we kind of like started off many endeavors to kind of scope out the terrain, and now we will be kind of closing them and releasing them one by one and really polishing them, as Marek said. Because right now it's really in prototype state. And this is just an example of how many objects we can simulate with good performance. This is like antenna block from SC1, and this is just our benchmark for our like data-oriented pipeline, where we kind of like simulate it, send it to render, update it on the GPU, and render it on the GPU. And we are using GPU-driven pipeline, so the GPU itself is kind of like doing lots of work. We are no longer sending everything to GPU, and I think Tomas will be talking more about it. Last but not least, new set of tools. If you have been modding, for example, Space Engineers 1, you had to use Notepad to do any changes to the data and to release a mod. And it wasn't like that we would be keeping the tools from you, we just didn't have them. We were using Notepad as well. This time around, we have a full-fledged editor where you can actually see that it's almost similar to Unity, for example, just standard way how developers are working these days. So there are some files, like some definitions, you can change the properties, you can preview models, etc., etc. Everything is inside of one tool that we are using, including like editing particles, editing animations. It can do it all. And this is something we will be releasing very soon, this year. Before even survival, we will release modding SDK, including our tools. So that will be a big thing for us, because community will be able to start like creating their own parts. So not only creating in-game, where you can create your worlds, your blueprints, like ships, etc., share it with others. That's our first update that we will do. But next update will be actually even creating new types of blocks, new types of asteroids, like whatever, you name it. What's in the game, you can mod it inside of our tools.
My name is Tomas Drinovsky, and I'm basically responsible for the render. I'm leading a small team of render programmers. And I would like to talk about the render, what has been new, what has been improved on the VRAGE 2 way of doing things. So first of all whole render is being GPU driven. Basically everything which is generated and like for the rendering, for the visuals, it's being processed mainly by the GPU. We are trying to leverage most of the work from the CPU and doing it on the GPU. So there is a scene living on the GPU where there are no changes, where there are no instructions from the game. The whole frame is being rendered with minimal communication between CPU and the GPU. That also means that we could free some of the cores for the simulation, for the game. So the render itself, it's single-threaded because it does not need to do much work. Like most of the work is really done on the GPU. So all the cores are being left for the simulation, for the water, for the physics, whatever you name it, for all the systems. There's still some work being done on the CPU, like for the render, but it's data-oriented as like rest of the engine, rest of the game. So it's perfectly like fast. Big thing for us is that whole game and the render as well is data-driven. That means that you can change the visuals, you can change the materials just by changing the data. You don't need any, like, you know, code changes. You don't need to do any modifications of the engine itself, which is quite a new thing, because in the VRAGE 2 there were like just some predefined material types and you could not extend it. Here we will have this ability. What is really important for us is because it's a game where like we really want this to work on wide range of hardware, so every system must be scalable. So we are really trying to have this in mind during the design process, that everything is scalable to some degree. Like the big thing for us is also like upscalers, of course, like everybody is using them. So we are quite ready to use upscalers. We are using FSR right now just for the anti-aliasing, but we will use it for upscaling as well. And in the future, we will explore the other possibilities. It uses DirectX 12, so it's quite old already, but it gives us the ability to use the latest features, you know, ray tracing, like indirect execution, and so on. It has been written from scratch, but definitely VRAGE 2 was full of really well written and well working pieces. So we did not like throw away everything. We really tried to salvage what we can. So that's why the like development process was kind of fast. So what makes the renderer shine is the illumination. So illumination, global illumination, consists of two like elements: direct illumination, indirect illumination. We have improved both of those aspects, like in many various ways. So, for example, for direct illumination, we improved shading model. So basically, what it means that we implemented the industry standard for the shading, which also means that the artists and the modders, in the end, they can use like other software for authoring their assets. For example, Blender, Marmoset, Unreal Engine, and it will be looking quite closely to what, or like the results will be expected to what they will see in our engine. We have improved shadow sampling in a way that we are using sort of anti-aliasing on the shadow maps itself. We have introduced or added shadow maps on the point lights, but to make it like efficient, we have introduced shadow masks as well. I will talk or show them in a few seconds. Some advanced light types, like RL lights, we will show them as well. And more importantly, we have worked quite extensively on the indirect illumination. So that's basically alpha and omega of current engines, like how they do indirect illumination. Space Engineer 2 is a very difficult game for indirect illumination. It has destructible terrain, it has moving objects. You can be on the moving ship, which is traveling in a fast speed over some terrain. Like there are many difficult cases. Most of the existing solutions or solutions which other engines are using, they are not capable of capturing all of those situations well. So we spent quite a lot of time experimenting and doing some research, trying those methods. So we ended up with the raster method, which is using ray tracing. Raster stands for reservoir-based spatial temporal importance resampling. Quite long name for a very clever idea. I will not go into the details, but what is important that we have extended it with camera space irradiance cache. It's a similar technique which is used by the Aghayev sample, which is quite famous in the rendering programmer community. So let's look at images. We have user-created content. Players can place point lights anywhere in the scene, which is a big problem for us, and it's big. It's like very different from the usual games where the point lights are being placed by the level designers, and they are placed in places in a way that it does not affect the performance too much. They can do optimizations on the level design. We cannot afford that. So and because we wanted to add, shadows for the point lights as well. So we have shadow maps for several lights around you, which are updated basically every frame. And then we have some so-called shadow masks, which is just a low resolution shadow map, which is rendered only with the static objects, so with the grid. So in that way we can afford to have many lights with the shadows. Then advanced light types. So we will be introducing capsule lights and array lights. So in VRAGE 2 we had only point light with no shadows and some spotlight. So now we are adding point lights with shadows. We are adding capsule lights, and we are having array lights. Array lights will be a really nice addition for LED screens. And speaking of LED screens, I can show you some examples of the indirect illumination, which are now using not array lights, but just using ray traced solution for the and using emissivity property of the material. So you can see on this image, scene which is very dark, and it's being lit just by some light coming from the doors and just the emissivity, emissive elements in the scene. And because the space engineer will be full of those indicators, buttons, LED screens, everything will be blinking, shining. So I think in the end, this will create really nice atmosphere even in those poorly lit scenes. The important thing is that because it's using ray tracing, it will not be affected by only things which are on the screen, but also things which are out of the screen. Another example of our indirect illumination is some hangar scene. So you can see there is basically a very metallic surface, a metallic floor, and you can see how the reflections of the colored box are being reflected onto the surface, how the cavities on the top of the screen are being lit by the bounced light. So I think our solution works quite well. This is just visualization of our irradiance cache, which is quite low resolution. It's being updated all of the time, and basically what it does is that it's our way how to simulate multiple bounces of the light. So we can not have only 2 bounces of light, but 3, 4, basically any number, because it's accumulated over the time. Big topic for us to improve materials. We wanted all the materials to be very plastic, to have really 3D embossed effect. So for blocks, we are using parallax mapping. Parallax mapping basically will be used on all of the small details like buttons, some frames, ridges on the blocks. Everywhere we have some flat surface. There we are using the parallax mapping. And for terrain, and I'm pretty sure Natiq will be talking about it more, we are using tessellation. the advantage is that it gives us nice silhouette over the parallax mapping. So for terrain, we really wanted that, and it's needed. So tessellation, and I really think the difference is obvious. How armor edges, this is kind of like a subtle effect, but I think it's quite a lot. So in VRAGE 2, edges were being marked or like being overlaid with some additional geometry. You can see it in those white lines, which was kind of like, it was a nice solution, but we wanted something different for the VRAGE 3. So we introduced some beveling system, or like some chamfered edges. So that works in a way that when you are composing the blocks, we will apply some processing on top of it, and we will chamfer those blocks in the pixel shader. And in the end, this is how it looks on the ship. You can see those little differently lit lines along the edges. It's really subtle effect, but I hope you will like it. And speaking of like vertical slice 2 and what will be coming in the future updates is planets rendering. So we have improved the rendering of the planets, especially from the space view. We are adding some high resolution overlay map. So when you will be looking from space, it will be looking really crisp, without any blurry details like on the vertices. So I hope you will enjoy it. We have revisited or like improved the atmosphere quite a lot. Now you can see that we are able to have some occlusion from the planets, so it will create correct effect on the atmosphere. And we are able to simulate proper sunset and sunrises with the red dawn. And this is a sneak peek of our volumetric clouds solution. We will be adding more volumetric effects in future. So far we are working only on the clouds, but this is something you can expect to see on the planets.
Hello everyone, my name is Natiq. So let me take you to an exciting journey of VRAGE planets, let me put it this way. Because this will be the main topic of VS2, of vertical slice 2, obviously. So this is how planets currently, along with the atmosphere and all the vegetation and voxel materials look like currently in Space Engineers 1. So our goal was to come up with something that would look much more exciting. So what you can see on the left is the result of Space Engineers 1 and VRAGE 2, and on the right you can see what we currently have in Space 2. And as you can see, it's much more detailed, it's much more realistic, it's way more denser in terms of texture resolution, biome maps, material maps, like all the exciting stuff. So that's the VRAGE 2, that's Space 1, and that's the Space 2 featured by VRAGE 3, right? So as you can see, the resolution of the height maps went higher. We've introduced many voxel materials, and now they're distributed in a much more realistic way. Like they're respecting all the crevices, all the terrain features that are actually on the height map. So this is a very cool way of how to produce realistic terrain. But before going deeper into development, of course, we sat together with guys, with artists, with coders, and we tried to come up with references, with a few references. Well, not a few, of course, but many. We wanted to come up with a prototype that will help us to understand what it actually takes to create a realistic terrain. So this was our references, which we made in Houdini. So this is actually fully procedural piece of mountain or rock, cliff. And by coming up with this image, by coming up with the form, with the shape, we were able to understand what it actually takes, how we should achieve this form. So there were a couple of things that came to our mind that would be great to have on top of having very high resolution and highly detailed height map. And that was definitely the solution of having caves, overhangs, and boulders that are kind of subtracting, well, namely caves, that would be basically subtracting from this height map, and that will enable us to have these kind of caves and crevices that are going deep in horizontal direction into the walls, basically. And you cannot achieve this kind of stuff, this kind of terrain features, with just the height map, right? So, in a nutshell, after analyzing all of this in Houdini, in Marmoset Toolbag, in various softwares like Octane, Render, and stuff like that, we've been able to come to a very essence of what it takes to create a great-looking planet. And as you can see, it's definitely high-res height map, baked overlays, which Tomas was just talking about, tessellated voxel materials that add a fantastic level of realism, and it's especially visible when you're walking on the terrain and you literally see every bit of a relief, every stone, every crevice. It's just amazing feeling of immersion. That's really cool from visual point of view. And the biome map, also very important. I will be showing it later. And also the detail map, large-scale detail maps, to introduce details such as dunes in deserty areas. Then, of course, boulders, overhangs, caves, and finally, great-looking atmosphere. And I would say only with atmosphere you can achieve like insane amount of mood, really. It's just an amazing artistic tool, just on its own. So this is just the one image from the Houdini, and this is the system that we've been able to come up with to create this cubic map. And what's really cool about it is that we've been able to invent a workflow that would keep all of the seams, you can see here, seamless, so that they don't have any breakups where those tiles, where these 6 tiles actually meet. Because in VRAGE, planets are actually consisting of 6 textures, right? So 6 sides. It's basically a cube, just inflated. So that's the image, one of the many, many terrain areas you can find on our planets. So this was done, this particular one was done in World Creator, and we have a lot of differently looking images and terrain sections, terrain areas taken from all around the world. I mean, existing ones as well as modified and completely new, non-existent ones. So we've made quite a lot of work on that to have our planets look fantastic, hopefully fantastic. So this is the erosion process in Houdini, and that's an absolutely insane way of introducing realism into pretty much any height map you're authoring inside of Houdini, or it can be even World Creator. So this is an amazing way of creating these natural sediments, you know, and similar stuff. And this is the planetary overlay section that Tomas was mentioning. So as you can see here, so this is the bare voxels. What you see here, this is how planets look like without an overlay, and that's how they look with an overlay. And as you can see, now with an overlay, we have an extreme level of realism, detailization. So that's what makes them so cool, right? So they cover voxelized material, voxelized terrain, bringing this another level of detailization. And this is the Mars-like planet. what you see here is again the overlay, so that when you're approaching a planet from space, that's what you see. That's what you see from space. And as you're approaching, we're slowly, with a fall off, we're revealing the underneath, like true voxel terrain. And that's actually how it all blends together. What you see here is basically the voxelized terrain, and this is the overlay. And they're blended together with some fall off, right? And this is another example with water, by the way. And I can assure you currently, because this is a quite old GIF, currently our water looks much, much better and much more realistic. It has, visually, it's really stunning. And this is the tessellated voxel materials. This is the visual effect, like the immersion effect I was talking about. So it's really cool while you're walking on it. You see every stone, every rock, and they have real height. So it's not fake thing, right? So you really feel it visually, and it has all the it can cast shadows. So all of those bumps, they cast shadows. How cool is that? This is the rock material that we have on our mountains. This is the special underwater material that we will be using for the seabed or riverbeds. And this is how very roughly biome map we're using looks like. So every material in VRAGE on our planets has its own value from 0 to 255. So this way we can define where on the planet particular materials are situated. So that's a really cool way of defining it. So yeah, that's how the biome map in action actually looks like in VRAGE, in SE2. And by the way, everything you see is like work in progress. Most probably they will look even more cool. So this is the effect of the large-scale detail maps I was mentioning a bit earlier. So this way, with using those detail maps, you're able to introduce such details like dunes, or additional crevices, or some hills on the green fields, and stuff like that. So it's really helpful to introduce additional bumps, additional relief on top of already existing layer of height map. This is the section about boulders, overhangs, and caves, and that's how the overhangs are currently looking like in SE2. So pretty cool stuff. Here you can see the one of the overhangs eating out of the cliff here, creating this natural phenomena. So that's basically what happens in the real world, right? And another, like the final thing that makes planets a fantastic way to conduct your romantic evening is the atmosphere, right? So, and atmosphere on our planets look absolutely amazing. You can do whatever you want. You can come up with pretty much any planetary look using the controls, debug controls. That's, for example, what you can do in just a couple of clicks and, changing of sliders in debug menu. So you can quickly come up with Mars-like atmosphere. And it's really literally like just a few sliders, a few color changes, and boom, you have these cool things going on, right? And this is the workflow that we've been able to come up with on the Mars-like planet, where you can pretty much project any individual height map data onto an already existing base layer of the height map. So what I mean, you have some base height map, and then you can project whatever you want on that. So your cat, your mother-in-law, picture of your mother-in-law, so anything. You're the master. So yeah, I think that's looking pretty cool. And I think that's all from my side. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Natiq. Maybe we can say that creating a game is like a puzzle. Everything needs to fit together. Marek has the big vision to make sure that it really works well at the end, and all of these guys who were just presenting are, so let's say, small pieces of puzzles putting together to make sure everything also looks nice. So thank you very much,
Absolutely.
Natiq.
Thank you too.
We have a few minutes for questions, if there are any for Natiq. Yes?
A couple of things. One of the things I wanted to ask about was with the height maps. In SE1, they're obviously lower resolution than what we're working with, but they've also got a bit depth of only 256 colors. Is there any increase in that bit depth, or is that effectively being achieved with these detailed maps?
If you're talking about height maps,
Yeah, height maps. So the height,
yeah.
the height's limited to, you've got 256 heights you can define. Is there more than that we can define in SE2?
Maybe, if I understood you correctly, if you're talking about the bit depth of the height map.
Yeah, because it works in grayscale, right?
So if you're talking about the bit depth in SE1, if I'm not mistaken, and I might be mistaken because I didn't touch SE1 sources for quite some time, maybe they were 8-bit, which might have caused a little bit of a stepping in some areas.
Yeah.
That's possible. But what's cool about SE2 sources, and specifically height maps, is that we're using 16-bit sources, yeah, which offers amazing amount of smoothness, right? So you can have really cool-looking transitions between different areas, like light and dark areas, right? So that's what makes it really cool. And we were able to witness the effect of this 16-bit depth in action while we were working on when we were taking some existing satellite data from Earth. If it wouldn't be for 16-bit, we wouldn't be able to transfer all of this crazy amount of details, right? So that's what I'm really happy about, that we have this 16-bit depth in our height maps.
Hello, I am Petr Minarik, and I am responsible for water development in Space Engineers 2 and also VRAGE 3 engine. So let's start, let's sink into it. This is some history of water development. It started years ago with research, of course, because it was very crucial and important to find out the correct algorithm, correct approach how to simulate water in Space Engineers. Because as it was many times repeated, we are very dynamic game. Everything can be destroyed, everything can be changed. So even water needs to support this kind of dynamic behavior. After some initial experiments, we started with prototypes in SE, and we started to develop 2D version of water, where we proved that it's possible. What we expect from water? It must be also very dynamic. It needs to support from zero gravity to any large gravity and any direction of gravity. It needs to support the scale from small blocks to planets, so that's another quite challenging feature of water. We need water to flow, so you need to see how it flows through holes, how it covers the surface, how you can interact with the water, so waves, visuals, particles, foams, everything. We also expect that water will behave naturally, so if you have some hole, you can fill this hole with the water, and also if it is connected underneath with some tunnel, other side of the hole is filled with water too, so it's expected, and we don't want to break these expectations, this immersion. And you can take water to your container and you can put it on any other place, including space. How it started? First, there were some very simple prototypes in 2D, like this. You can see that we decided to use cell simulation, cell-based simulation, because it's much faster for simulation, and it was possible to control it compared to particle-based simulations, which are very wild. We were able to simulate in 2D quite interesting structures like fountains. We are still able to simulate pressure, zero gravity, different angles of gravities, pressures, and so on. Also, we were experimenting with viscosity, we were experimenting with different kind of solids, and we were also implement simulation of beer, which was very interesting. This video shows simulation of water in zero gravity. You can see that it creates globules, which you would expect it in a pressurized environment. It looks even better with proper rendering and proper visuals. This video is our experiment from SE. It is still in debug draw, it's still quite roughly drawn, but simulation itself works and water flows out of the hole quite nicely already. So you can use it for gardens, flowering trees, and so on. This picture shows the dam, which is our testing scenario in Space Engineers 2. This is how it's supposed to like with all the details, tubes, pumps, and so. What we needed to support also is some kind of loading system, because the simulation on low scale in order of meters is quite different than simulation on oceans level, let's say. And we had to implement even more and more features which support gameplay features like buoyancy. We need to support underwater swimming, ships crashing into water, ships being crashed apart on the water, their buoyancy flowing, and it's quite unexpected how many features there is, because, as I said, it's dynamic, and there is still something new what you can implement. This is how water is rendered from the distance, from the space, and these are the oceans, which can be in any place, and any side of the planet can be turned into simulated water, and you can interact with them. So you can destroy the shores, you can build your rivers, you can build your tunnels, whatever you want, and it should be visible from the space when you do it. We needed to implement procedural generation of water, because manually pouring water everywhere is just not possible. You cannot pour manually a lake. So we need to generate it. We need to implement spherization, which is technology which makes the planet round from distance. And of course, visuals. This is the showcase of the dam and interactivity of water, which, as you expect, if you make the hole in the dam, water starts flowing out, and you can use it again for any purposes you want. As I mentioned, buoyancy, you can imagine crashed ship on top of the water surface. Some pieces of the ship are already at the bottom, and you can use the rest of the ship as a bridge, or just for playing, or resources, definitely. And the last, probably the most used scenario of water and the dam is like destroying the dam completely. And in that case, you can flood your enemy and win immediately. So this is the example of large-scale simulation that you can use it even with these amounts of water and play with it again.
I will cover Space Engineers 1 because we also want to say a few words about our best-selling game so far, and we hope Space Engineers 2 will perform better than Space Engineers 1, of course. But still, for Space Engineers 1, many people and many players are always like, oh, they're gonna abandon it. But I can assure everyone that we have 2 individual teams working on both games. So there is a dedicated team for Space Engineers 1 as well as dedicated team for Space Engineers 2. Today we were looking more at Space Engineers 2, of course, but for Space Engineers 1 we have a couple things planned ahead of us. In regards to what has been already done and successfully completed, there are many things that I would like to highlight, including 12 years on the market with more than 5 million copies sold across all the 3 platforms. Biggest one, Steam, of course, but then we added 4 years ago Xbox and later on PlayStation. And of course Microsoft and Sony saw the success of Space Engineers and they pretty much immediately asked us if we would like to be in their Xbox and PlayStation Plus program, so Xbox Game Pass and PlayStation Plus. Plus, of course, Microsoft also wanted to have the game in Microsoft Store as well. Currently, we're also working on the upcoming updates, so it's not only one, but there are actually plans for the entire year, being 206 and 207. So the team is heavily focusing on many things, from the improvements, playability, UX, UI, and many other things that you can see here. It's like a never-ending evolution, I can say, of the game, where you can see big differences looking at the screenshots and videos back from 2013 when the game was released for the first time, coming to the latest trailers that we just released in November when the last DLC and the free update was released, and it was actually a Contact DLC. There are always suggestions welcomed from our players, and even though we are encouraging everybody to give us feedback, we have so many suggestions from players that it's really impossible to implement everything, because we would need maybe more than 10 times the team that we currently have. And yeah, we are really happy that the game, such as Space Engineers, which is open world sandbox, full of creativity and endless possibilities, inspire people to do many things. And that's what we also see on our forums and feedbacks and support site, where there is always almost never-ending feedback from them and suggestions, as I already mentioned. In case of the last year, there were 2 big updates, including the free update and the paid DLC, which is always cosmetic, and it's always in our DNA to bring those DLCs as a, let's say, if you want to support us, you can, but there is nothing like pay-to-win aspect implemented in Space Engineers. So all players who are playing simple base game have the same possibilities in terms of the gameplay than players who are playing with all the DLCs, because there is no advantage except of the visuals, of course. That's why we are having these DLCs in place. So 2 most recent updates were Signal and a Contact DLC. Big success was the Contact, as I've mentioned, because that was the best-selling DLC ever. We introduced it, as I said, in November, and it brought a lot of new game features and improved playability for players, which was more focusing on P versus E versus P, again, encounters in 205, so there is like more things to do in a game, more, I would say, entertainment and more goals, because there are many players who are saying that, okay, this is a game without any goals, without any objectives, but we don't want to put their goals, we don't want to put their maps or boundaries. We want to really keep it open and want to really keep it a playground for anyone who wants to play the way they want to play. And speaking about mods and UGC that we also touched a little bit for Space Engineers 2, we are really glad that Space Engineers 1 is always at top 5 workshops overall on Steam, with over 500,000 workshop items on Steam, and it brings us a lot of also responsibility, because we see that players care and they are sharing their creations with others. And pretty much looking at the servers, we don't see server that there won't be any mods or anything like this implemented or installed on the servers. In terms of analytics, so looking at the data only for 2024, players spent more than 41 million hours playing the game last year, which can be, yeah, it's a huge number, but in reality there are players who have more than 10,000 hours in game. And we are very happy that there are many players who became our employees and contractors working with us and for us. So it's great that they stepped from one side of the barrier to another one, but they're always bringing us great ideas, and especially things that community and player base want from the game and from us as a studio. 34 million of those hours were played on Steam, so it also underlines the fact that Steam is the biggest platform for us, and of course that's also the main reason why we are actually releasing Space Engineers 2 on Steam as at the first place. We had more than 2 million unique active players, and speaking on a, let's say, daily active users, it's usually the peak during days somewhere around, let's say, 8 to 10,000 people. When there is a new DLC, we see more. Of course, when there is no new content, we see less, but those are ups and downs as in every other game. What's next for Space Engineers 1? The next update is 206, as I've mentioned. That's only, let's say, a number. However, this update will be more looking at the quality of life improvements, various bug fixes, but also we will be introducing new cargo ships that are already looking really good. And yesterday we had a team presentation when some of those were already presented and mentioned, so it really looks nice. 207, which is also planned as an following DLC, will be more focusing on survival. So enhancements of the survival for Space Engineers 1 will be adding more and more options into the game overall, and there will be also these environmental hazards introduced into Space Engineers 1. And for 208, which is then the next DLC update, we will be looking more into the PvP gameplay elements, so there will be more fun playing player against player for Space Engineers 1. And of course, this is not the end. We are planning more updates in the future, so we are not going to stop it there, but the development of Space Engineers 1 will also continue, so we're not stopping and abandoning the game, how as many might say, and we'll probably see this next week when we will release Space Engineers 2, so we are waiting for it. So, upcoming 206, a little bit more details, focusing on UI elements, as I've mentioned, cargo ships improvements, action slot for UI improvements, and also new prototech blocks, which were actually originally introduced in this contact update that we released in November last year. And of course, quality of life improvements. So those are pretty much what you can understand under this is all the feedback from our players. If we see that something is upvoted on our support side, we really look at it and we try to get it into the game, or at least plan it and think about it, discuss it with the team to make sure that it is planned and it's going to be fixed or addressed at some point. So this would be really in a nutshell, and this would be all for our presentations today. Thank you very much for your time.